Mr. Daniel Alba, there is a big rumor floating around that there is a Star Fox game coming out in just a couple months in the summertime. And I felt that it was a good opportunity for us to talk about Star Fox in its current state, which some might consider anemic.
Yeah, we haven't really heard pretty much anything of Star Fox in quite a long time, and this is only right now just a few days after hearing or seeing the official announcement on the Mario Brothers movie that Star Fox is gonna make an appearance of all characters.
His first appearance in like 8 years is going to be in the Super Mario Galaxy movie of all places.
What a way to make a comeback for the youngins to be like, oh, who is this creature? There's so many young people in the audience that aren't going to know who Fox even is at this point.
I mean, look at Starlink. Fox was in Starlink. That was 2018. So there are 8-year-olds out there who have never seen a new thing with Fox McCloud in it.
I don't like how that is true. I don't the way that you say that.
It is upsetting. It's really upsetting. And I'm the one saying it. But really the part that I want to hone in on this, I'm pretty confident that the Star Fox rumor is true. It coming so close to Fox being in a movie, it makes sense. But the thing that concerns me, and I think it concerns you too, is that Nate the Hate, he called it a classic style game, and my alarm bells started going off when that happened. I don't know, how do you feel?
When I hear classic style game, I mean, when you look back at the series, the majority of these classic style games all kind of follow the same format, and every Star Fox fan out there knows what that format is, and I understand why you're also concerned about this, because I am too, about the potential direction they're going with the story in particular, I imagine.
Yeah, it's kind of twofold for me. Like, one, there is the story element. You know, Star Fox is like this big kind of like space opera, and there was a narrative that was being told from Star Fox 64 all the way through to Star Fox Command. But since Command, we have abandoned that version of events because in 2016 we got Star Fox Zero. Zero basically meaning that it was a reboot. And it just told the story of Star Fox 64 again, kinda question mark.
Because Star Fox Zero essentially was like Miyamoto's excuse to play around with the Wii U gamepad in a fun and quirky way, which a lot of people found divisive, and that sort of led to people wondering, like, is this just all Star Fox is going to be now? Because there's been so many iterations or releases of this game that has just been about the Lilac Wars, essentially, and retellings of it over and over again in one way or another.
Yeah, I mean, I think the first time it happened was excusable, you know, going from the Super Nintendo to Nintendo 64, where we got, you know, full voice acting and some pretty epic set pieces for a 64 game. And Star Fox 64 is, you know, widely beloved, infinitely quotable, but I feel like Nintendo, you know, in light of Star Fox Adventures and Assault and Command, are like unwilling to try something else. Like, they feel so committed to the bit with Star Fox 64, and they're trying to recapture that lightning in a bottle, only to have failed, in my opinion, every time they've ever attempted it.
Yeah, and it's so interesting because, like, those games that you mentioned, those aren't all completely Nintendo anyways, because, like, Rare worked on Star Fox Adventures, it was Namco that worked on Star Fox Assault, and it's like, Nintendo doesn't really themselves do anything outside their usual playing field with Star Fox, and that's what also has me worried here too. It's like, I don't know if we're gonna get much, I'm afraid of how much we're gonna get outside of the usual, you know, Star Fox, Lilac Wars, from Corneria all the way to Venom sort of storytelling with Andros at the end. But at the same time, it's like, I also tell myself, there's no way they can just tell the same thing again after their last main release was Zero. Right?
I mean, I would hope not. Like, and I am counting kind of like Star Fox 64 3D in the mix here, even though that is a remake and not a new entry. But we've retreaded this plot so many times. There's only so many times I can be told about James McLeod, Peppy Hare, and Pigma Dengar going to Venom to fight Andross, only to be betrayed, so on and so forth. We all know how it goes. But I really liked the direction that Assault took in particular. And I can appreciate Adventures. I don't particularly love that game, but I'm happy that it exists and that it's different. But Assault moved the story forward into a future. We got a new, Star Fox member with Crystal. Team Star Wolf also changed with Panther, the removal of Pigma, and Andrew was just a standalone bad guy. And I just loved the way that these characters evolved over time. But now we have this tendency to just keep going back to square one. Thinking about what the new game could be, I sincerely doubt it'll follow Assault or Command. But will it follow Zero, or will it just restart again?
Yeah, if they still hold to the fact that Zero was a reboot, I would hope that they would find some way to continue the story off of there. But at the same time, it's like there are now established characters that would have to be reintroduced in some way or another. Because that's what I loved about the GameCube era, was that like we were actually continuing that story from Star Fox 64, there was Star Fox Adventures, and Star Fox Assault respected what Adventures set together, because you have Crystal, because you see Tricky with little cameo in there as well. And I was like, okay, yeah, we're gonna keep on continuing from Assault forward, right? And then we kind of just never reached that level of like expanding the story from there on, honestly.
Yeah, I mean, Command kind of does, with a bunch of, like, non-canon, like, futures. And that's fun in its own way, but it does feel like we've kind of been stuck in the same place since, 2003 or 2004? In addition to the story and the characters, I'm also fearing just what kind of game it is. Like, Star Fox Zero, it follows the formula of Star Fox 64 pretty closely, where you have various branches amongst the levels that you can end up taking to either change the story or just change your route to the end, but it does it in a significantly less interesting way, at least to me. And the game does not really extend much longer than Star Fox 64 was. So you really just had this $60 HD kind of reimagining of Star Fox 64 without doing anything particularly interesting outside of the control scheme, which, like you said, was already divisive. Personally, I found enjoyment in the control scheme after really getting used to it, but it's not something I'm eager to return to. But I also don't want to just return to Star Fox 64 on-rail segments the whole time. Like, if you were to make a Star Fox game and you were to evolve the game from that as like a baseline, what would you do?
Open world Landmaster gameplay. I think I mentioned that as a joke in our Discord once.
I prefer the ground.
Oh, it would be... God, what would that... I mean, that's obviously not what's going to happen here if the rumors are saying it's going to be a classic style, but doing something outside the box, what Nintendo has been experimenting with and what they thought would be, what's in right now is following that kind of open world kind of feeling, which I don't know. They kind of toy with ideas like this with Starlink, and that's just the thing. Like, there's so many interesting things you can do with Star Fox, its characters, and its world, but they are so, like, they just don't want to reach outside the box and try something different, at least to the extent that some other companies have done with their property.
I mean, you can make the argument that they're playing it safe because, the last few Star Fox games, or really any of them, outside of 64, haven't sold particularly well. But you could also make the argument that they're not selling well, at least in the case of Zero, because they're not doing anything new. You can't reasonably expect the series to be successful unless you are pushing boundaries, or at least, doing something marginally new. But Star Fox is so dedicated to Star Fox 64, it's well past being a fault at this point. Mm-hmm. I think Starlink was the most interesting thing that Star Fox has done since Star Fox Assault. And it's sad because it's not even a Star Fox game.
Like most people remember Starlink was a thing because it had Star Fox in it. Like without Star Fox, I don't think I would have even like what? So, with that massive figure you can have on the side for it as well. Like people remember that game partially because it had that association with Nintendo's property like that. But no, it's again, it was
for me like Starlink. The only thing interesting about that game is Star Fox.
Yeah. So it's like for Star Fox, I'm hoping, and I was always saying this is like I was saying to myself before, like I want this to kind of follow what's going on with Donkey Kong right now, because Donkey Kong also, like, he had his appearance in the Mario movie, and then he had his own game, and his own game like really pushed boundaries of what a Donkey Kong game could be. And now Nintendo is really pushing him as his own like IP, his own property, his own brand again. The redesign definitely helped that as well. But I just want them to realize, like, maybe that helps to push them to realize, like, oh yeah, we have properties that can just be popular amongst other people, even though they've been laying kind of dormant for a little while. Star Fox can be another one of those properties. Like, maybe this is just one other push, one little experiment to see, like, if we have this character appear in the movie, like, will people start talking about it again? Because obviously with our circles, we've been talking about it a whole bunch with rumors of a new game coming from Nate the Hates, with the appearance of the character just out of nowhere for a Hollywood film. It's bringing out a lot of interesting conversations right now.
Yeah, you know, Fox having his own poster for the movie, it does seem like Nintendo is about to make a big push for the character. And obviously, you know, it's a Miyamoto character in a Miyamoto character's movie.
Mm-hmm.
So maybe this is Miyamoto trying to get Fox back out into the world again. But, you know, it worked with Donkey Kong. Bonanza sold well. It didn't sell like crazy, but it did sell well. And for me, like, I felt more attached to Donkey Kong as a character after playing Bonanza than I ever had before. And that there's a golden opportunity here to do that again with Fox. There's that part of me where, you know, we've been down this road a few times, and I don't want to like hope and then have my dreams dashed.
It's significant to note that, yeah, you and other people have had that connection with DK, a character who largely doesn't really have much of a narrative in a lot of their games. And then you have Fox, where the narrative is most of, like, it's half the game is like the narrative and the gameplay itself with the characters themselves. And it's like, I guess it just depends how they want to approach it. If they want to do a new game, these characters are quite beloved amongst people for, you know, whether it's the quotes or for just, you know, the character designs themselves, the gameplay. We all have our attachments to Star Fox in one way or another, at least from our circle and our friends. But yeah, it just depends what they want to do and how they approach it. That's going to really change how they handle it. And just even right now, I'm wondering, like, how are they going to handle Fox as a character? I'm really curious to see how is he going to be like typical, you know, 3D animation funny animal character, or is that going to be my Star Fox, you know?
As soon as I saw Glenn Powell, I was like, he's going to be like Hammy, like a parody of himself. I could be wrong. We actually, you know, we haven't seen him in motion or heard him perform, but his announcement video of being the voice of Fox had a lot of that energy.
So weird to see that, where it's just him in the outfit, but there's a bunch of Mario sounds happening in the background. What a weird mix of clashing worlds that was.
And some crazy hair on that wig on Glenn Powell's head. Just it really sent a message. But there's one more element to the rumor that we haven't really talked about, and I think this is the part of it that does give me a little bit more like hope and intrigue, and that's the fact that Nate said the game will also feature online multiplayer. Star Fox Zero had multiplayer, but it was strictly for co-op. One person would fly the R-Wing and the other one would handle combat, and you would use that in the, you know, in the single player adventure. But, you know, one of my favorite parts of like Star Fox Assault and Star Fox 64 was the multiplayer. There's the dogfighting, the on-foot third-person shooting. You know, Nintendo has really pushed kind of like their online experiences a lot in the last like decade. You know, we've had 3 Splatoon games, and Splatoon 3 has really figured out a lot of the kind of online experience issues that 1 and 2 had. And I'm looking at Star Fox and I'm like, wouldn't it be great if this was a game that I could play for the whole like lifespan of the console? You know, I think there's a lot of potential there, but, you know, is it as simple as the dogfighting in Star Fox 64, Star Fox 64 3D? Is it going to be more elevated like it is in Star Fox Assault? Where does it land?
Yeah, that's the main question for me right now is like, what would they do with multiplayer? How can they integrate everything that they've learned with Star Fox and to just make something that's a compelling multiplayer experience, not just integrating with Star Fox, also what they've learned with online games like you mentioned. Yeah, that's a tricky one, because I know there are some people that think the multiplayer in games like Star Fox 64 isn't really that engaging. You're just kind of floating around doing barrel rolls and somersaults, just trying to grab the other person from behind. But no, I mean, like, there's got to be something more that evolves that series in its dogfights to get really compelling, to get people to want to play multiplayer online. Because I know we do, but I wonder how like other people would react to that sort of gameplay being highlighted in a game like this.
I would love it if it was a little closer to what happened with Assault, where it was like a mixture of on foot, you could like freely get in and out of machines. Honestly, it's kind of like Halo in that regard, just without the refinement of control and, you know, actual shooting. So if they went in that direction, I think I'd be excited, just because I love Assault's multiplayer, and having a version of that again would be great.
Mm-hmm.
But I think it would be interesting if instead of just dogfighting, that there was a variety of modes like capture the flag. I swear I had more ideas than capture the flag, but we'll just use that as the baseline. You know, they had score attack in Star Fox 64. I think it can be more than just a bare bones dogfighting experience. And I had a bit of a goofy idea. You know, they were pushing the Switch 2 camera, right? What if when you're communicating with the other players that you pop up in a little transmission box, and then the text or the speech to text puts your words on the screen in the same way as like Star Fox 64? I think that'd be really cute.
Oh man, yeah, they can utilize, as we've seen with like game chat, the text to speech is actually pretty good. It's pretty accurate, so you can just do that and have your little icon or little box in the bottom of the screen show up. That'd be kind of amazing.
I'd love it if it like let you take like 2 pictures of yourself, one mouth closed, the other one mouth open. So it like marionettes you.
That sounds kind of dumb, but it's also something I would almost expect Nintendo to do, to utilize their features, like with the camera, with game chat, with just things that are within the Switch 2, because Nintendo always tends to use their unique features more so than other companies will be willing to for certain things. And yeah, that sounds like something that they would probably play with if they had the ambition to do so.
Yeah, honestly, now that I've put that out into the world, I would be sad if it didn't happen.
Please, I have my camera here. I don't have enough people or enough reasons to use the camera.
Yeah, like after Mario Party, it just kind of stopped happening. I mean, it's an Animal Crossing, but we need more reasons. Yeah, I mean, outside of just basic speculation, you know, we are concerned about Star Fox. We're hoping that the game evolves the series in some ways. You know, I don't want to go another 10 years with a bad Star Fox game.
Same here. Yeah. Ideally, for me, I hope that it's some kind of quote-unquote sequel to Zero, in which we are continuing the rebooted timeline. But I guess we have to kind of reintroduce certain characters again to establish, you know, their relations and everybody together. But that's going to be tricky, because we have other games that were already made, that weren't Nintendo made, that have these characters that are just, you know, part of the main franchise. So really interesting to see what they'll do from here on. And I have a feeling it's not going to be just, you know, retreading the Lilac Wars again, but that's just my speculation.
Yeah, if it's not just a drop in the bucket Lilac Wars retelling, I think we're already off to a good start.
Mm-hmm.
But let us know in the comments below what you're thinking in regards to Star Fox. There's a lot of fans out there, but, you know, I feel like a lot of us got burned in the last couple attempts at Star Fox. So I'm remaining hopeful, but I am cautious. But let us know what you think in the comments below. We've got a lot more on the way here. I guess about Star Fox too, because we're going to go see the movie and we're going to talk about it afterwards. So make sure you're subscribed to GVG for that. But for all your Switch 2 news, reviews, and everything else in between, make sure you're subscribed to GVG. There's a lot more on the way. But until then, keep the games good and the vibes greater. Bye now.
Till we meet again.